Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and what I have for you today is my review of the Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6. This is different from the Sony BRAVIA Theatre Bar 6. I know it can get a little confusing, and I'm going to talk about some of the distinction between the two systems towards the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's get started with the review of this. This is the Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6, and it is a 5.1 setup. It's a very traditional 5.1 setup, and for those of you that know, about a decade ago Sony had this great 5.1 setup called the Sony HT-RT3. You got a bar, you got a subwoofer, you got rear satellite speakers, and everything was connected directly to the subwoofer. A couple of years later, Sony actually went and updated that. You had the Sony HT-S20R. I'm going to link to my review of that soundbar in the description below. And I thought it was a great 5.1 soundbar. It was a great successor to the HT-RT3. But then Sony went and did something great, is they fixed the one problem that the HT-S20R had, and they did that with the Sony HT-S40R. Basically what happened is, if you wanted the rear satellite speakers, you had to get the wiring of the rear speakers all the way to the front to the subwoofer to ensure you got a great surround sound experience. I mean, there was no other way to connect the rear speakers. There was no wireless connectivity back then. Everything was just connected straight to the subwoofer. So what Sony did with the S40R was they had this a little setup, a little box where you could connect the rear speakers, and that little box would connect to the subwoofer wirelessly, so you didn't have to drag the wires through your living room or your entertainment room to get to the subwoofer. That was great, and that same system has been implemented here with the BRAVIA Theatre System 6. You do have this rear console which connects only to a power point, and both the rear speakers, the left and the right, connect to this little hub of a box, and that hub connects to the subwoofer wirelessly. So this is actually great, especially for those of you that don't want to run the cables all the way through your room to the front, and for all those home theater enthusiasts of you, you know how big of a problem cable management is. So soundbars just make everything that much more easier. So let's talk about the contents of the box. You get the bar itself, you get the subwoofer, you get a nice compact remote control, you get the hub that the rear speakers connect to, and the two rear speakers. You also get these small little feet that you can attach to the base of the soundbar, and this is great especially if you have a TV that's tabletop mounted and you need just that much more elevation so that the bar is slightly above the feet, giving you enough room to keep your TV's feet as well. This works well with Sony's TVs, which actually give you feet at the end of the TV rather than something like, let's say, an LG or a Samsung, which has a very centrally mounted tabletop stand. But hey, these are just personal preferences of how you set up your home theater. Now, to set up the soundbar is actually a very, very easy process, but there is something that you must note, that unlike other soundbars that you may have seen, all the connectivity options in this one go at the back of the subwoofer. So you have your optical port, your audio port, your HDMI, AE/ARC port, all at the back of the subwoofer, and you also have a port where you can connect the actual soundbar to. Now this, I feel, is a bit of a con, because that means that you have to place your subwoofer fairly close to the TV if you are connecting it via EARC. Now the cable, the HDMI cable that comes in the box with the Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6 is a little more than 6 feet long, so you do have enough length to kind of move the subwoofer around, but I feel it's a little limiting, especially if you're someone that needs to move the subwoofer away from where your entertainment setup is. Maybe you want it closer to where you're sitting. You can't do that with this home theater setup, right? So another thing to note is that the bar itself connects via a cable to the subwoofer, and that cable is extremely long, so it's very convenient for you to kind of have the bar right there under your TV or slightly below, depending on how your room setup is. I actually have the TV up there and the soundbar is fairly below, and the subwoofer has to be right there next to the TV at a very convenient position close to the EARC port on the TV. So that's just something to note. Again, for the rear speakers, like I said, it's really simple. You have this central hub where you connect the left and the right speakers. The left and the right speakers are identical, so it doesn't matter which is which. As long as you place them correctly, you connect it to the right port. And for this placement, I would recommend that you keep it at your ear height facing you at about an arm's length distance, right? According to me, that is the perfect listening position for you to get some great surround effects. And of course, the hub needs power supply, so you need to ensure that the power supply is there as well. Now, setting up the system after you've connected it to your TV is really simple. You just need to download the Bravia Connect app on your smartphone. And once you open the smartphone, it's actually going to ask you to go closer to the subwoofer. And once you reach the subwoofer, it's going to pair. I did get a small app update at that point once it paired, which took about 5 minutes to get done. And after that, it gave me a step-by-step process to check whether the bar was connected, gave me a test tone from the bar to know that the bar was connected, and the same for the left and the right rear speakers. I can of course show you guys the app setup screen now as we're talking about it. Right now, a very cool thing is that when you are finally setting up the system, is it asks you how far you are sitting from the soundbar. So you'll have like and you have of course feet and meters depending on the metrics that you're comfortable with. So you have under 5 feet, 5 to 8.25 feet, and then more than 8.25 feet. Now, considering the size of this room, I kept everything as 5 to 8.25 feet, and I think that was the perfect sweet spot to get great sound output. Even though the surround speakers were at arm's length, that's way less than 5 feet, I still chose the 5 to 8.25 feet because that just gave them that much more volume so that I could hear them more clearly. And of course, they were at ear height, so the surround effects were actually very, very good. Now, in the app, you get controls like your volume, your bass level. You can control the level of the rear speakers as well, and that is actually very good. Now, you also have this button called Sound Field on the remote control. We will get to the remote control in a bit, but you have a button called Sound Field in the app as well. And what this does is it actually helps virtualize any 2.1 sound. Now, this home theater system in a box can this soundbar system in a box can actually decode Dolby Atmos, even though it doesn't have any upward firing drivers. We will get to that in the performance bit, but this is something that I want to highlight right now. How this soundbar actually decodes 2.1 channel content is actually very, very interesting. Now, what I would recommend is that if you're listening to music on the soundbar, you should put the sound field off, because music traditionally is best heard from the front speakers as a very, very simple 2.1 setup, right? But if you're someone that wants to enjoy it with the surround speakers, you can press sound field and do that as well. Now, when you go into the sound field settings, this is something I want to show you guys via the app screen grab that I have, as well as I'll explain it when I'm talking about consuming content. So when you switch on sound field, I recommend that you go into the settings, sound field settings, and out here you'll have 3 options. You'll have Sony zone settings, you'll have Dolby and DTS. Now, if you have a TV, like let's say for example an LG TV, they've stopped supporting DTS pass-through, so maybe you want to switch to Dolby. But if you just want one setting that fits all, I would recommend just click on the Sony setting and forget about it. Sony TV still support Dolby pass-through, DTS pass-through, sorry. So that's great, but I would still recommend choose Sony over Dolby and DTS. In my experience, for a variety of content, this was the one setting that fits all. Now, after this, I need you to go and do something else. Is you need to go to the stereo content playback type in the settings. Again, I'm showing the screen grab out here, and out here you will have 2 options: multi-stereo or upmix. Out here, I would recommend you choose upmix for one simple reason. I'm going to give you an example with content from, let's say, a movie like Top Gun Maverick, right? What happens is when the planes are flying around and you are listening to content in, let's say, 2-channel output, what multi-stereo does is it basically ensures that the dialogues and all of the effects which are coming from the front speakers are also coming from the surround speakers, which doesn't really give you that great of an experience. I mean, you have dialogues coming from the sides and the front, and it feels like all the speakers are just giving you the same sound output. This was an issue I had with the S40R as well. You can go back and check out my review of the Sony HD S40R. But the upmix setting out here is what makes the world of a difference. Now, what upmix does is it tries to take this 2.1 content and virtualize it. So when the planes are passing by from the side, you are going to kind of get a surround sound experience from the surround speakers, and the dialogues are only going to come from the front and maybe from the side if there's a character who's moving around you. So that is why I would say that this upmix is the biggest upgrade over something like the Sony HD S40R, and if you're upgrading from there, it definitely makes sense for you to upgrade to something like this. This is a great option for a system like this. Now, let's talk about the performance. And before we talk about the performance, I want to tell you that I generally connect my Apple TV box to the home theater that I am working with. And what happens with the Apple TV box is that it generally gives you very good Dolby Atmos output. But ever since a very particular Apple TV OS update, soundbars which don't have more than 5 drivers get recognized as just a 5.1 system, and the Apple TV doesn't decode it as Dolby Atmos. So this is more of an Apple TV box problem, because I played movies in the Apple TV app using the Apple TV box, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the native app on this LG TV, and I can tell you that the Dolby Atmos output is great and recognized by the soundbar. I can show you a screenshot of the app that is being recognized, but when I connected it to the Apple TV, it was recognized as 2-channel only. So that's a bit of a bummer, but that was a blessing in disguise, because now I can tell you something about the performance of the soundbar, right? So in a movie like Top Gun Maverick, towards the end where you have the big dogfight sequence, when I played it through the Apple TV box, it was giving me 2.1 channel output, and when I used the upmix virtualization of the Sony system that it's offering, I got a very good surround experience. Like, I could hear some of the bangs from the left and the right. Same thing in a movie like Ready Player One, right, where you have all these vehicles running around, and it just gives you that immersive experience. But when I switched to the PlayStation or the LG TV's native app that I have, I actually got the very good quality surround sound experience, because it was Dolby Atmos content being decoded on this soundbar. So I could actually, in a movie like Ready Player One, where you have this race at the 13-minute mark, you actually have all the coins flying all over the place, and the rear speakers just really carry that weight very well, and the subwoofer just kicks in every time there's action on the screen, and it's very room-filling sound. Now, what I want to tell you about is the specs of the soundbar is that it has 3 front drivers, the center, left and right, and 2 tweeters at the end. And of course, the surround speakers also only have front facing drivers, no drivers up top. So unlike other soundbars, there is no upward firing driver that is giving you that virtual surround sound experience. And that's not exactly a bad thing. I mean, if you go back and check out some of my other soundbar reviews, I'll say, yeah, the virtualization works kind of well, and it gives you this feeling that the sound is coming from up in front of you. But with the rear speakers on this system, you are actually getting that great physical channel separation which physical rear speakers bring, which is just great. And before I go on talking about this anymore, I just want to give you a demo of some music and some gaming content which I can show you, and talk a little bit more about the performance.
Person's in trouble. Clear out. I've got this. Where'd those symbiotes come from?
Okay, now that you've had a chance to check out those demos, I am going to talk a little bit. I've already spoken about movies. Music, it's great. Like I said, put it in 2.1 mode. You're going to get all the bangs and thuds, whether you are listening to classical music, if you're listening to rock. It is that subwoofer that actually kicks in and gives you that extra bass that a lot of Indian people like in their music, right? We do want a little bit of that extra bass, and this soundbar gives you that. And if you don't like it, well, you can of course reduce the bass as well. But I would highly recommend switching off any post-processing. The sound field should be switched off just to ensure that you enjoy music like it is meant to be. Moving over to gaming, I played a bunch of games, and like you saw from the clips, the audio from gaming is fantastic. Let's start with a game like Spider-Man, right? When you're flying through the city, you have the traffic noise that's coming even in from the speakers behind you, and when you're gliding around, you can just feel the wind rustle, especially if the speakers are close enough for you to get that experience. Even in a fight, if you have an enemy that's somewhere behind you, the surround experience from the surround speakers is actually very good, and every time you hit a power or you hit like a hard thud that needs good bass, that subwoofer kicks in, giving a great experience. Same thing for Ratchet and Clank, right? Like the sequence that I'm showing you you have guns with different bullets flying all over the place, enemies all around you, and this is just the advantage of having physical speakers around you, is that you can just make out where that sound is coming from, even if you're not getting the height. This is decoding Dolby Atmos. You are getting an overall great surround sound experience, but you are missing out on height speakers, and that's okay, because the overall experience is very room filling from the soundbar. Even in a race, right, in Gran Turismo, the music is great. When you overtake a car, you can actually hear the engine sound of that car passing by you from the surround speakers. The experience is very, very immersive. A game like Doom, The Dark Ages, which I'm playing on the Xbox out here, just sounds fantastic in the Dolby Atmos sound that it has, because you have so many enemies all around you, so many enemies firing at you from different directions, and that metal music, that heavy metal music just kicks in, and the entire room is filled with sounds, and you can actually feel the audio moving all around you in the room. It is one of the best, most immersive experiences I have ever had playing a game. Same thing for Gears 5, right? In the sequence that I show you, there are sounds which actually come from behind you, and those are the sounds that there are many times where I miss it just because I am playing using the TV speakers or a dedicated bar that's under the speakers without surround speakers, and I just cannot emphasize enough how much of a difference the surround speakers make for something like this. So the last thing I want to talk about, of course, is the remote control. It's plain, it's simple, it's standard Sony. You have the power, you have the option to choose the inputs, like I said, sound field. It has a voice mode that enhances the dialogues, but I think the dialogue sounded pretty good out of the box. It has the ability to increase and decrease the bass, a mute button, and of course a night button where the explosions are kind of reduced in dynamic range, and the softer volumes are kind of brought up, so you don't have to keep, tweaking the volume if people are sleeping in the other room. You can keep it at an acceptable level and make out the soft as well as the loud noises without having the full range when the night mode is switched off. So let's talk a little bit about the verdict before we get into the distinction between the Theatre System 6 and the Theatre Bar 9 from Sony. If you are looking for a soundbar at about 50,000 rupees, right? That's the price point of this Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6. As of me making this video, it's priced at about 50,000 rupees. I'm sure you can get it for lower with card discounts, and if you go offline to purchase it, you are going to get a pretty good value proposition. Where this soundbar succeeds is that it gives you the rare speakers in the box, which in my opinion are very essential for a great experience. You also get this kind of a little connection box, so you don't need to run the wires of the rare speakers all the way up to the front like you did in past Sony soundbars which came with the rare speakers. And the sound output is great. I mean, the way it decodes Dolby Atmos content, the ease of control from the app, the ease of control from the remote control, it just is a very good value proposition. My only con, and this has been there with the HT S40 as well, which is Sony's older system, is the fact that all the connections go into the subwoofer instead of the soundbar, and that is a bit of a bummer for me. But here's how it differs from the Bar 6. Now, the Bar 6 is a dedicated 3.1.2 setup. What does that mean? It has 3 front firing drivers, a dedicated subwoofer, and dedicated up firing drivers to give you a more of a height experience. Now, how does that sound? Well, I'll let you guys know if I get a chance to review that one. But an advantage that the Bar 6 has is that the connectivity options are behind the soundbar, which means you connect the HDMI cable from the TV to the soundbar, and the subwoofer is a little more flexible because it's wireless and can be placed around the room. And of course, the sound output power is different between the two. It's slightly lower on the Bar 6 and higher on the System 6. So here's your decision-making proposition, right? If you want a soundbar that kind of sits below the TV and you don't have space for the rare speakers, then the Bar 6 should get the job done for you. Again, how great it sounds is something I'll let you know when I get a chance to review it. But the Theatre System 6 is ideal for those that are looking for a surround sound experience. They want the rare speakers, they want to be able to feel the surround sound. And I cannot emphasize enough how great of a proposition this is for gaming, for watching movies, and also for music right out of the box. Yes, there are some of you that will nitpick and maybe want something that has slightly more definition, slightly less bass if you want a little more neutral sound. And there are a lot of options for you out there. But if you're someone that's just about ready to upgrade your home theater, you have a TV, you probably have a simple soundbar, you want to give it a go and you don't want to spend more than 40, 45, 50,000 rupees, then the Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6 is a great option. Like I said, the sound is fantastic, the movie watching experience is immersive, the rear speakers get the job done very well, and the hidden gem has to be the upmix setting, which just helps you virtualize 2.1 surround sound. So if you just are watching some old movies on a streaming service, or if you're watching a YouTube video, or if you're watching anything that is just 2-channel output, that virtualization of getting good surround sound without having all the speakers give you the same sound is the reason you should upgrade if you have a Sony HD S20R or even the S40R, in my opinion. So there you have it, guys. That was my review of the Sony BRAVIA Theatre System 6. As always, you can let me know what you thought of this video in the comment section below. And for more from the world of technology, you can subscribe to the channel. This is me, Samir, signing off. I will catch you in another video. It's goodbye for now.